Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome to this open event held online about the certificate in history. Thank you so much for your interest in this course. We've got an hour or so to tell you about the course, and also for you to ask questions, both to me and to the course team, and also some of the current students who've kindly joined us. My name is Professor Tom Buchanan. I'm currently the course director, and I've been involved with this course for almost 30 years since we set it up in the late 1990s. So I'm very well placed to be able to tell you about the course, and also to give you a sense of how successful it's been and how much fun it's been working with literally hundreds of students over that period of time. If we could have the next slide, Claudia. So the session will last for about an hour. It's being recorded, so if anyone wants to, go back over what we've said later on, you're welcome to do so. Please be reminded also that we very much want to hear your questions and want to know what your questions are and do our best to answer them. But to let you know that you can submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. And if you pose a question at any point in the webinar, we will either get back to you online or we'll discuss it at the end of the session, when you're also obviously welcome to pose questions directly to us. Okay, so we got a few slides introducing ourselves. First of all, as I said, my name is Tom Buchanan. I'm currently the course director. I studied in Oxford for my MA and my DPhil. My research is mainly on 20th century British and European history, and I've got a particular interest in the Spanish Civil War. And on the course, I teach both European and British history. For many years, I've taught an option on the Spanish Civil War on the course. Let me turn to my colleagues and ask them to introduce themselves. We've got two of the teaching team with us. So first of all, Dr. Rosemary Cresswell.
Hello, I work on the period between about 1800 and the present day, although I do look back further at times, and I teach currently on the units within the course on approaches to history. So that's looking at methodologies and different ways of looking at history, such as material culture, art history, oral history, and many more. And then British history, which is about the 20th century. And I have a background in economic and social history and in history of science and medicine. But I work much more broadly now on history of humanitarianism and charities and healthcare in particular.
Thank you. And we're also joined by Janet Dickinson.
Hi, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for coming along. I have taught for the department for a couple of decades now, and on and off teaching on this course. And I nearly always come in to teach the first module that you'll be taking. We have 12 sessions on the Tudor period, which is where my research is focused. So it's a great privilege and pleasure, in fact, to come in and talk about my subject with all of the students. So, and it works really well because early modernists, Tudor historians, we all disagree with each other very excitedly and passionately. So you get a nice, clear, what we call historiography, a series of debates that you as students can get to grips with, can engage in, and it's a nice way to start the subject. So that's what I do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Janet. And we're also joined on the panel by two of our current students, Joe Reynolds and Laura Chandler Page. Are very grateful to them for joining us, and they'll be speaking about their experiences on the course about 12:30 or so. I look forward to that. Okay, Claudia, should we move on to the next slide? So I want to just run through some of the really the essential information about the course. I mean, obviously there'll be a great deal more information available on our website. But the first thing to say is that it is a two-year course. It's a part-time course, but it's a very intensive part-time course. It's the equivalent to the first year of the undergraduate degree in history. And it's very important to note that the course is taught in person. That is, students attend class in central Oxford at Rewley House, which is our headquarters. And our next intake, which we're currently recruiting for, will begin in late September 2026. Okay, Claudia. So, who is the course intended for? Well, I think it's fair to say that over the years, we've had students really from all ages and backgrounds. So there is no particular target audience. We like to think that the course is intended for anyone who has a strong interest in history and people who are really looking to develop that. So we'll often get people coming forward to the course who maybe studied something else earlier in their lives, did different careers, but have always maintained a strong interest in history, and at some stage then want to take that further and to study it in a more systematic way, and so on. It's also important to note that no formal qualifications or previous study of history are needed. The course is open to anyone who wants to apply, and we will assess you on the basis of your application, and we'll come on to the details of that later on. But I think it's important to not be put off if you feel that either your qualifications are in the wrong subject, as it were, they're not historical, that's certainly not a problem, or if indeed you feel that you don't have a level of qualification, because what we're looking for is people's potential, as it were, now. We want to, if you apply for the course, we want to assess you and what you're capable of, as it were, in the current situation you're in. And so, in that sense, we're not so concerned about what you may have studied many years ago, or what you've done with the previous part of your career. Okay, Claudia, have the next slide. So, how is the course set up? Well, basically, each year you'll be attending 28 weekly 2-hour seminars. So we actually run 2 courses because it's a 2-year course. There's always 2 courses going on, and whichever evening you start on, you'll stick with that over the 2 years. So this will be held on Monday evenings, as I said, in Rewley House in central Oxford. And in the classes, there'll be a combination of, you'll get some kind of lecture style delivery, backed up with slides and handouts and that kind of thing. But also there'll be quite an element of discussion. People will be chipping in with questions throughout the class, but also we'll be having formal discussions of, say, documentary material, works of art, that kind of thing, in smaller groups as we go along. We also offer you tutorials, which are tied into the coursework essays that you write. Typically, these are one-to-one tutorials. We do sometimes have some small group tutorials as well. And it's worth mentioning we can also offer tutorials online, so it doesn't have to be tied down to office hours or being in the building. So we are quite flexible in what we can offer. It's also worth mentioning that we have a study week right in the middle of the course in early September. It's a non-residential study week, but many students do choose to stay in Oxford during the week. Many of them will find places to stay in the vacation at other colleges, for instance. And it's a terrific opportunity to study intensively and to really get stuck into the optional paper that you've chosen. So we start work on that in the study week, and then we pick it up again in the first 5 classes in the autumn. So that's what you'll be dealing with over the 2 years of the course. Next slide, please, Claudia. Okay, the course content. So there are 2 years. In the first year, there are 2 broad survey courses. The first one, which Janet has already mentioned, is the what we might broadly call Tudor history, British history from 1485 to 1603. A fascinating period in British history. looking at many different aspects of that period, politics, religion, social and economic topics, as well as discussing some of the marvelous sort of images that we've got one on the screen there, the ways in which monarchs presented themselves and used the power of the image to project their role as monarch and so on. The second one is European history, 1815 to 1914. We study that thematically. The first 5 sessions are give you an overview, and then the remaining 8 sessions look at, you might say, thematic topics. So we look at topics such as industrialization, nationalism, imperialism, and so on. So the purpose of the first 2 courses is to really take some pretty broad subjects where clearly you're not able to get into tremendous depth compared to, say, the optional papers, but it gives you a good grounding in British and European history. And for each course, you would write 3 2,000-word essays, and at the end of the year, there would be exams in both of those 2 subjects. And we can talk about that a bit more later on. Okay, that's year 1. Claudia, we have year 2. Thanks. So as I mentioned, in the second year, we kick off with these optional papers. We haven't currently decided the optional papers for the autumn of this course, but there'll be a choice. There'll certainly be a choice of optional papers. One will be the nobility and gentry in England, which is 1558, 1642. There will also be a topic in modern history, but that hasn't been decided yet. The important point about these courses is that, unlike the survey courses I was talking about a moment ago, they will be taught on the basis of a collection of original primary source documents. And so you really get that experience of working from the original source material, and it helps you to kind of really get a new sense of depth in the studies you undertake. Then we have a course called Approaches to History, broadly looking at questions related to how we study history and how history relates to other similar disciplines. I should have mentioned the optional paper. We have, there are 2 essays there. One is an extended essay of 4,000 words, and there's also an exam at the end of the second year. Approaches to History is just assessed by 1 essay. And then there's a final course, which is on British history in the 20th century, and that's another survey course looking at political and social history, as well as some international relations. And that is also taught with 3 coursework essays and an exam at the end of the year. So there are still 2 exams at the end of the second year. And your overall grade is based on both your first and second year exam and coursework performance. Great. Claudia, can we move on? So just to sum up really on the assessment, you'll see then in the first year, the 6 2,000-word essays and the 2 unseen exams of 3 hours each. And then in the second year, you've got 5 2,000-word essays. You've got an extended essay of 4,000 words, which comes with the optional paper. And you've got a further 2 unseen exams of 3 hours each. The exams are currently handwritten. They're taken in person. And the exams do make up 60% of the final grade. And the reason for that is primarily because many students on this course want to apply to study at undergraduate level in Oxford University, and the ability to take exams and do well in exams is therefore a very important part of it. We do support students in building up to exams. We understand that many students haven't done exams for many years. And we have a mock exam in May, which I think many students find very helpful. But also we have revision sessions running up to the exams, which will help you to think about how to answer questions in an effective way. and to look back at what you've studied earlier on in the course. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next slide, shall we? Okay, so coming on the course, of course, gives you tremendous opportunities because you would have access to a number of the facilities within the University of Oxford. The university, of course, has a vast amount of tremendous resources at its disposal. In particular, you would have a student card which would give you access to most of the university's Bodleian libraries. The Bodleian Library itself is a very historic library at the centre of the university, which is also a copyright library and has, therefore, copies of pretty well everything published in English. But there are also about almost 40 other libraries that make up the Bodleian libraries, and you would have access certainly to those that are relevant to your studies. That includes a lot of online facilities as well, and the amount of online material it increases all the time, and of course is tremendously helpful, especially for accessing things like scholarly journals and that kind of thing. So there's a tremendous amount that you could access through your university card. There's also a social element to the course. I mean, students often make their own arrangements. I'm sure that Joe and Laura might want to say something about that later on, and that's up to really up to the students to how they want to do things on the course. But we do have various social events during the year. For instance, at the end of each year, we have an annual dinner for both first and second year students, which comes after the exam, so it's a bit of a chance to relax after clearly what's been a major part of the course, and enjoy that. You can also have access through your university card to a number of other aspects of the university. For instance, going to university lectures, most of which are available unless they are kind of bespoke classes for a set group of students within the university. And it's worth mentioning that when students complete the course, we every year have an award ceremony, which is held inside the Sheldonian Theatre, which actually you can see in this picture. It's not the big building in the foreground, which is the Radcliffe Camera, which is actually a library, but to the left there with the little blue dome is the Sheldonian Theatre, and we do have a rather really very nice ceremony there, often attended by the Vice Chancellor and other university figures, and followed by a reception in our department to mark the occasion. So there is a kind of a wider life to think about if you come on the course, although it is a part-time course. And of course, some students may travel quite a long way and they may feel their time in Oxford is limited, but there's plenty you can do while you're here. Often students will plan to come up to Oxford for the day. They've got the class in the evening, but they maybe in the daytime will go and use the libraries, such as the one you see in the picture there, or catch a lecture or something like that, and maybe meet their fellow students before the class. So it can be a very, very interesting and nice way to spend the time. Okay, Claudia, have the next slide. Okay, so if you're thinking of making an application, which we'll, as I said, we'll warmly welcome, the first deadline, we have a number of deadlines in the first half of this year, but the first one will be on the Thursday, the 12th of February. And we'd ask you to submit then a number of pieces of supporting work. The first one is a written statement of why you actually want to study the course and any previous experience that you have. And we give you 300 words for that. I do think this is a very important thing. It is worth giving thought to before you submit it, because it's a way of kind of encapsulating a number of different things. That will help us to get a view of your application, your sense of your interest in history, your passion for history, the kinds of historical things that you enjoy doing. That's very relevant. But also previous experience, which might include your previous studying, but also it could include the kind of maybe societies you're a member of, the things you like to visit, what you've done in your work life as well. All those sorts of things might well be relevant. It's also very helpful if you could include a CV, just sort of setting out in more detail what your path has been, as it were. And we do ask for details for one referee. This is often something which causes concern, I know, because many of you will feel it might be some time since you're at school or university, you might no longer have that sort of contact. Don't worry if that's the case. When we say we want a referee, it's really someone who can give us a bit of a sense of who you are and what your capabilities are. So it could be, for instance, people who know you from the local community, or it could be maybe work colleagues who've known you for some time. Again, it's part of, for us, it's building up a picture of you as an applicant. It's very helpful to get a view from someone who knows you well. And the final element is proof of English language ability. But again, to reiterate, no formal qualifications in history are needed. Clearly, if you have qualifications in history, that's tremendously helpful to us. For instance, if you had studied history at school and then maybe dropped it, but that's worth knowing. Likewise, if you have actually studied history more recently, that's tremendously helpful to know. So I know in the past we've had students who've taken, say, some of our online courses and maybe have quite recent experience of, say, writing essays, and that's tremendously helpful for us. That will certainly help build up, whether our courses or other courses from other providers you've taken, maybe with groups like the local authorities or the WEA and organizations like that. Anything like that, does help us, as I've said, to build up a comprehensive picture of your application. But absolutely no formal qualifications are needed. Everything will be assessed in the application process. Thank you. Claudia, can you have the next one? Okay, there's a bit more advice here on writing your statement. So you might want to think about things like books or films that have ignited your curiosity about history. Obviously, don't just give us a title, but also do tell us a bit about why that's important to you. That's very helpful. Anything you can tell us about your hobbies and activities with a history focus, again, that's great. Why are you excited about the course? What is it you'll be looking forward to? Things like that you can put in. Basically, we are looking then for people with a strong interest in history, and I think that's important for a number of reasons, not least because obviously this is a history course, but also it's a 2-year course, and you need to have a strong commitment to the subject to really sort of maintain your stamina throughout the course. If you start off the course without that strong interest in history, then you're less likely to have the kind of necessarily the enthusiasm that you need. But also, we're looking for more generic qualities: your ability, your commitment, and of course your motivation. Okay, next slide, please. So when we shortlist applicants, you are invited for interview. So we do always interview people. Almost all applicants are interviewed, I think it's fair to say. The interviews are usually held within 6 weeks of the application deadline. We do our interviews nowadays over online. We use Microsoft Teams. And again, the interview is really part of the application process. We'll have your written submission, but then it's a chance also to talk with you, to get a greater sense of why you want to take the course and so on. So hopefully, people who take the interview will feel that's been it's a constructive a part of the process. I mean, this is not meant to be in any way adversarial. It is really about us learning more. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. It is worth mentioning that we do have some bursary funding available for student applicants. And if you're there's a link there if you're interested in looking into bursaries, you can follow up for more information. And that is something that if you're concerned about the cost of the course and your ability to take the course, then certainly do please follow up that link and look at what might well be available. Strongly advised. Thanks. Claudia, is that it? Is that the final slide? Okay, so just a few ways of finding out more information. Obviously, there's our website. You can email, and there's also a QR code to scan on the right-hand side there. So hopefully, if you've got further questions that we can't answer today, well, hopefully we will be able to answer all or most of them. There are other ways in which you can take this further. So hopefully you will feel able to do so. Great. Was that the last slide, Claudia?
Yes, it was. And
I'm
ready to move on to our current students.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let me hand over then to Joe and Laura, who are going to tell you about what it's like to study on this course. So who's going to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Thank you. Excellent.
So for myself, the reason that I applied to join the course was because studying history was something that I had wanted to do back when I was 18, and various personal circumstances pushed me towards a career in IT instead. So it's quite different to studying history. The course really seemed like an opportunity for me to see if I enjoyed engaging academically with history and whether I was any good at it, as a prelude to hopefully pursuing that further and taking it on. Fortunately, I do enjoy it, and hopefully I will be taking it forward. The things I've really enjoyed about the course has been engaging with research in particular, and as a surprise to myself, also writing. Turns out you do need to probably enjoy both of these things, because you do quite a lot of both. For me, the second year choice was a real highlight. The opportunity to engage with primary sources was really fascinating. It's quite different to the survey courses, but very, very rewarding. The course itself, meeting the people on it, we've got quite a community in our year. We create our own events in addition to the ones provided by the course. So sometimes at the end of terms, we'll go out for drinks after, for example. And I think the support of the teaching team as well. Every single teacher that we've had has been extremely supportive and really wants to help you. The things that I would caution people applying for it is probably time. Really ensure that you do have the time to take on the course in a part-time way. Especially if you're traveling some distance. So for myself, I come from Chesterfield, so it's about 2.5 hours each way to Oxford. And I maybe didn't appreciate how much time that took out of my week, allowing me to then work and do the course. I have made it work, but it is significant. So do make sure that you are able to do that as well. And my advice would be to really take advantage of the tutorials that are offered. As I said before, all of the teaching staff really want to help you. Don't be afraid to mention anything you're struggling with, or if you don't understand it, they're there to help you achieve. And I think that's become very apparent. And my final bit of advice is, if you can, and I'm not very good at this myself, but try to do the exam prep as you go. Keep your notes organized. Otherwise, you can easily spend a week just before exams just trying to get everything in order so that you can study from them. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much indeed, Laura. That's really helpful. And we've also got Joe here. So Joe, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I don't really want to, at risk of reiterating what Laura has already said. Laura and I were both in our second year and second term of the second year, so we're working towards our exams and completing the course by June and July. I'll touch upon the exams first of all. It's nothing to get too anxious about. I'm going to quote Janet Dickinson here, who basically said, "You'll surprise yourself with what you know, but you do get out of it very much what you put in." It sounds like I am reiterating basically the words of my old teachers back at school. That being said, I mean, I was out of education from the age of 18 until a few years ago. And I started on the Certificate of Higher Education with Conted, or as was Conted before it became lifelong learning. And that's a module-based course. And it's you can basically, you build your own qualification. There are core subjects. It's very different because it lacks the contact time and it lacks the face-to-face element that you certainly get with this current course, the certificate. And that's really why I've embarked on this. I was very fortunate that Janet was my tutor for the Cert HE, and we've had the continuity going through. So I think this is our 4th year now of knowing each other. We've got to know each other quite well. But it's also, I have to thank Janet as well for the encouragement that she's given me, because I can actually see how I have developed as a student, and in terms of my studying, my approaches to study, but also the product that I'm actually producing as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's I can say what the course has basically done. It will enhance your study skills, note taking, essay writing, critical analysis, an academic essay, you know, how you approach an academic essay and being methodical. It's all of these are skills that are they're ongoing, they're developing, and you can take them with you with whatever ambitions that you may have after this course. And we all have different ambitions. We're doing this not just purely for the joy of learning. We all have ambitions beyond. For me, I found the course hugely rewarding from the academic point of view, but I'll also touch upon it as well. There is, as Laura said, there's the social side. I travel up from the southwest, so I can't get home in time in the evening. So I stay overnight, and a few of us do. And we do have a social time. We meet before class, we will eat together, and on occasion, we will socialise together. And I would probably say that at the end of this, not only have I developed academically, but I've developed friends that I'll be taking forward with me through this. It's the same as you would in any university experience. So it's been utterly rewarding, and I can wholeheartedly recommend it. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Joe. That's great. We're doing well on time. So can I just turn to Janet and Rosemary as my fellow members of the team and see if there's anything you'd like to add? Maybe things that, you know, obviously in my overview of I'll have missed out. Would you like to come in with the particular things that you think are particularly, applicants should know about the course? Rosie, do you want to come in?
Sure. I've noticed some of the questions in the Q&A that some people might be a bit more remote and might not be able to take part in the face-to-face. So both Janet and I'm the current assessor for the Cert HE programme, the Certificate in Higher Education, where much more of that can be taught online. So that's what Joe just referred to. So if you've got questions for us in the Q&A about that, then we can answer those about that different program. And another question that's come up about AI, then I think sometimes AI can introduce mistakes and things like that. So yeah, we are attuned to looking out for AI and are talking about that, aren't we? So we're definitely on the lookout for that as a development in higher education. There was another question also about pre-reading, and I wondered what colleagues had to recommend. But I think there's a book by Ludmilla Jordanova called The Practice of History, and that's particularly good if you've been out of school and education for a long time and are just wanting a reminder about the kind of basics of what studying history is. So that would be my recommendation. I wondered if Tom and Janet had any others.
Yeah, well, when people apply for the course and they're offered a place, we do send out a reading list of those sorts of preparatory books. So I don't know if the one you mentioned is on it, but there is certainly something that students would receive. So hopefully they can spend the months leading up to the course and doing some background reading. I think would certainly be helpful, and likewise doing some of the preparation for say the tutor course, which comes up first, and so on. But let me turn to Janet and bring her in.
Thank you, Tom. I wanted to just pick up on the point about in-person classes, because I know that's something that is a massive time commitment for students and staff. And the thing is, it's just so important. I think it's what the heart of this course is, that you are regularly together in a room with a bunch of other people who are prepared to talk to you about history and positively enjoy it, as opposed to, inflicting it on friends and family at home. And there's nothing better, in my view, than a good old sort of sitting down, chatting about history for a couple of hours. It's really energizing, and it engages you with the subject in a way that you can get there with independent study at home, but it's so nice to actually have the opportunity to actually discuss, try out ideas, and sort of form part of a community. So I think that's something I would really emphasize as being a really key feature of this particular course, and the way that we teach it, and the way that you come in and study it. And Joe and I, we've been working together for 4 years. We are still talking, and I really appreciate having students and then seeing them again. I'm very lucky with my job at Conted that I get to teach students a number of times, and out of that arises all manner of fascinating conversations. I can't think of Vienna the same way after talking to Joe about it when he's been living there for some years. I still remember one of Laura's essays, once it was de-anonymized, on the Reformation, and her particular comments on the Catholic Church, sort of pre and post Reformation in England. So you see that in-person connection, that individual connection with students and indeed with the group as a whole, that's just something that is really enhancing, I think, for all of us. So I would highlight that. In terms of pre-course reading, as Thomas mentioned, you'll be sent a reading list with a few things, particularly in terms of what it's like to study history at an academic level, and we're looking for you in a way to do slightly different reading there. I always say to students that you'll never read a history book from start to finish for your studies. I hope you'll do it beyond your studies, but really that's not what we're doing. You're learning how to write an academic history essay. You're learning how to, as it were, fillet a subject, to break open a subject in a way that is manageable within the time commitment. I know Tom will give you an indication of how many hours per week we expect you to spend on this, because I saw that come up in the questions. But it's a way of teaching skills as much as it is teaching the subject. The two things go hand in hand. So in a way, pre-course reading is your kind of last relaxed opportunity. Read something you enjoy, read something that interests you, that gives you a grounding in one or more of the subjects you're coming to study, and then you begin with us, as it were, reading in the way that you're going to want to read in order to make the most of your time and your studies. So I don't think students gain a great deal from thinking I must have read everything before I start. It actually works best to do it while you're, as it were, on the course. So those are just a few thoughts to add there.
Thank you very much indeed, Janet. Yeah. So should we turn to the questions? I know some of them have already been answered in the Q&A. And they range from the more specific questions to very, very broad ones. But I'm just looking at the top of the list there. For instance, a very specific question: is the final grade based on 50-50 split from the results in years 1 and 2? Well, actually, only about 2 years ago, we did introduce a slight weighting towards the second year. And also at the same time, we changed the balance between the exams and the coursework from 70-30 to 60-40. So the second year does count for slightly more. There's also a question, which is the other extreme, which is from Patrick, about why is studying history important? And that's one of those marvelous $1 million questions, really, isn't it? I think there are probably 3 different ways of approaching that. I mean, one is pure interest in the subject. We study, it's important because it's important to us, as it were. It's something we enjoy doing, and finding out about the past is something that I know many of you will feel you have a a passion for. But secondly, it is a tremendously good preparation, and that's why history remains a very important discipline in higher education, because it's all about having to come to a rapid understanding of a topic and, as it were, pulling your thoughts together. And the essay writing process is very helpful as well. I know 2,000 words doesn't often seem very much to our students, but that's part of the exercise, is condensing your thoughts and pulling together your argument into an essay. And that's often very helpful for if you want to take things in other directions later on as well. And I think the third point to bear in mind is history is tremendously important for understanding the world we're in today. That phrase of living in history, seems quite appropriate for the era we find ourselves in. And everyone wants to try and understand, where things are going and why. And I think history, is a tremendous benefit there. I remember a few years ago teaching the British history in the 20th century course around the time of the crash in 2008, and suddenly the 1931 crisis seemed very, very recent, and very, very real, and people found that quite alarming, really, how these things do come around. So that there are plenty of important reasons for studying history. What other questions can we turn to? There's one about Adrian about reading lists. I think we've already touched on that. But Janet, for the preparing for the tutors, would you recommend the John Guy book?
Probably. Probably Lucy Wooding's Tudor England is coming to supersede that.
Okay.
There's a question there about the online short courses. Yes, they would. I think this was it Laura? Sarah, excuse me. Sarah was asking, are they good preparation or a good way of getting a feel for the course? Yes. And of course, if you take a few of those, you're also getting a good grounding in a few different areas of the subject. Yeah.
Yes, and what I think, just to add to that, I think any course that you take where you do some written work and have it assessed and have that engagement with a tutor is tremendously helpful for your application, because it means that you will have, if you can have recent experience of having written an essay and had it graded, or even if it's ungraded, having that experience at least is tremendously helpful. Okay, anyone else want to jump in on one of these?
Yep, another question from Christelle about using a translation tool during the exams, because Christelle's first language is French. I don't think that would be possible, but Tom or Hazel may be able to confirm.
I think that's correct. It's not something we would currently permit, I'm afraid. Yeah. There's a question about how many places are available and what is the ratio of applications to accepted candidates. Over the years, the number of students who take the course has fluctuated. The current first year is actually it's over 20 students, but in recent years, a more typical number has been around 12 students for the last few years. So we certainly would hope to get around 20 students a year on the course. We don't really keep a statistic of, there isn't there's a limit in terms of the size of the room that we use, which is a seminar room. But we don't have a statistic as to a kind of ratio of applications to accepted candidates. I think it's fair to say that we do take a large number of those who apply, but it is on the other hand, it is a selective course. So do bear that in mind. It might not necessarily be the right course for you. Someone's writing, this is Marie Emilia, interested in themes such as ethics, post-colonial approaches, reception studies, and heritage representation. Would you see the certificate in history as a good foundation step for those topics, or would you recommend starting with a specific online course to explore them more directly? Well, thanks for the question. I think it's probably a good starting point for a number of these sorts of more specific topics, I think history is a very good foundation, full stop. But I mean, some of these may be quite. For instance, ethics will have a different kind of philosophical background, so perhaps less appropriate there. But I think heritage, post-colonialism, these sorts of topics, I think there would be this certainly would be a good foundation. We certainly study, for instance, we study the history of imperialism and its impact on Britain. We do study in the approaches to history part of the paper. We study things like questions of memory and commemoration and that kind of thing. So I think you would find the elements here, at least, that would be relevant to those topics. Anyone else like to come in on that?
Yeah, it might be worth looking at a certificate in higher education as well, because you can be more interdisciplinary with that programme, because there's the opportunity to take a core of history courses and then take courses from we have cultural heritage within the department, history of architecture, we have ethics within philosophy, for example, and there are modules on the classical world. So that might be appropriate for you too, to just have a look at in a bit more depth at the options that could be available for you to study with that programme. It is different because some of those modules are online and some are face-to-face. So there's that difference in the mode of teaching as well.
Okay, thanks. Question here from Ace, who asks, sorry, I've just lost it. Would applicants need to be specific to European history, or is East Asian history accepted as previous interest? Well, I think really any historical background is very valid. If you've studied in a different geographical or indeed historical period, don't worry about that not being relevant, as it were, because we would certainly be very interested to hear about if someone who has studied, say, East Asian history and so on. Although it's not something we study in any detail in the course, but it would certainly be a very valid part of the background. So thank you for that.
Can I respond to Lee's question? So Lee has a bachelor's degree and is choosing between this, as it were, and the undergraduate certificate in higher education. I think either would work as a route potentially forward to the postgrad certificate. What I would say is, if you're sure that you're a historian, then this might be the better program. 2 years, big emphasis on skills, research, writing. We don't have our exams at postgraduate level in history, so in a sense that would then become an obsolete skill for you. But if you're someone that is excited by the potential of interdisciplinary study, and that's definitely something you can follow through with in the postgrad certificate, then the undergraduate certificate in higher education is an excellent program as well. So in a sense, I think it's just a question of, do you like the look of the taught syllabus that we're offering, or do you like the look of a combination of the online and in-person classes that you take for the other program? Either works well.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I'm just looking at the question from Simon. What percentage of people don't finish the course? I mean, it'd be indelicate to, sort of give a percentage, but it's certainly true to say that, look, this is a course for mature students, and these are people who, life affects everyone in different ways, and things happen. People change jobs, they move house, they have all sorts of life events. So yes, some people don't finish the course, but I think what I would say is that we're very flexible. So, for instance, if something comes up in your life, which means, say, you're coming up to halfway through the course and you can't carry on, but you will be able to later on, we do have a system where people can apply for a suspension, whereby basically you step out of the course and come back in a year's time and carry on from where you left it. So we do have that opportunity, which means that actually some people don't finish the course, say, within 2 years. They might finish it over 3 years and have taken a year out in the middle, but they do finish it. So I think going back to the point a number of people have made about this, what's important here is A, the supportive framework we provide, B, the support from the tutors, but C, I also think the support that other students provide each other with. And that kind of means that if something does come up while you're on the course, then there is support there, and encouragement to come back and finish it. So hopefully that does answer that question. Another question from Ace: would this certificate serve as a strong pathway for a master's level study in the history of war, particularly in terms of developing historiographical awareness? Military history is something I'm greatly interested in. I mean, my sense is that that certainly is a good preparation, not least because I know a number of students have gone on to study at the War Studies Department in King's College London. So I know that there is a kind of pathway there that students have taken. And I think history of war is a branch of history. So there is, in terms of research skills and so on, there's plenty of overlap. And let me just ask Rosie. I mean, Rosie, you work in history of war to some degree, don't you? So do you want to...
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to continue to a master's degree, it would depend. I mean, this is useful advice for anybody here. Then you would need the full kind of credits of a degree program. So some people have continued to our postgraduate programs in the department who have already got a degree in another subject and then are doing this as a kind of conversion. But you would still need to have, a full equivalent of a 3-year degree to be able to do a master's in any topic in history. So there's that part of the answer to the question. There are essays within this course if you're interested in history of war, for example, on the First World War and the Second World War, and I'm sure within the modules on earlier periods too. So you can obviously choose those to specialise in as you write. And as Tom mentioned, bit back about the Approaches to History course having a session on memory. So we look at war memorials, for example, as part of that part of the course. And again, I mean, the kind of other alternative that we do, the certificate in higher education, there are, it depends on the year that the course is running, but there have been, specialist courses on that are related to history of war. So there's that option too within our department.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. There's 1 or 2 questions left. I think the question from Kayum Bapari. I'd just be helpful if you could give us a bit more information there. You say you've applied and need an alternative study subject option. I don't see. Could you give us a bit more information about the dilemma you're facing? That'd be helpful. Someone who's interested in Central Asian studies, Afghanistan. Okay. Yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, within the university, you would find expertise on Central Asia. I'm afraid that's beyond the expertise of this course. But if you were to take the course, there would certainly be things in the university that you could attend on that. Okay. Let's leave it there. If you have any other questions, you'll have seen that there's information about how to contact us, and we will do our very best to answer your questions. Beyond that, I'd like to thank you all for taking part, and in particular to thank my fellow panelists, Rosemary Cresswell and Janet Dickinson, and of course our current students, Joe Reynolds, Laura Chandler-Page, and also thank Claudia Ellard for organising all of this and making it all run so smoothly. We look forward to hearing more from you. If you choose to make an application, we will warmly receive that application and hopefully see you as students on the course in due course. Thank you very much indeed. I think we'll leave it there. Okay. Have a nice day. Bye.